Hi everyone, I'm Ahana.
And I'm Celine.
And welcome to another episode at the
We Are podcast.
So, today we have a news update. Back at it again. Before we start, school started for us last week, so let's just talk a little bit about that. How's the first week of school been for you?
It was pretty good. It was chaotic and very tiring on the first day.
Oh yeah.
And it just felt weird being back. And it was just a bit of an adjustment, waking up and doing everything, but it's been okay, and hopefully I'll transition more next week, so.
Yeah, I'm honestly fine with it. I'd rather be in school than have nothing to do, because it's I'm bored otherwise. I'm still kind of bored because we don't even have any work yet. But,
Yeah.
better something than nothing.
Yeah, it gives me a routine to follow, which can be good and bad, because then you get bored of the routine, and it's the same thing every day, but it also gives you something to having a schedule and having this routine that you follow, so knowing what's gonna happen is nice.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start off with the first update, and this is a continuation update, and I am so happy about this. So we're just opening it with a bit of good news. But the Inflation Reduction Bill has finally passed and been signed into legislation.
That's so good.
I'm so excited.
I'm very happy. Yeah.
So, just for a bit of background, this was a $750 billion bill, which is
a lot of money.
So much, almost $1 trillion. It was signed into law by President Biden this week, and it's basically the main goals of it were to combat climate change, healthcare, and inflation, so just helping the economy in general. And it is the biggest bill ever to be put towards environmental protection and climate change. So it's a very, very big deal. It gives $369 billion in climate initiatives to clean energy. And one of the main goals about this climate portion of the bill is to eliminate gas emissions by 40% by 2040 or 2030 actually, which is crazy. That's almost half in 10 years or less than 10 years even.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely insane, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that they were able to pass this. I know there was a thing going around where you could call your senator, and I'm grateful that we were able to do that, and that the senators hopefully listen to people. I mean, I don't know, probably. And we got the chance to share opinion, and that they passed it, so that's really great.
Yeah. So this bill contains a lot of different things. It invests in a lot of marginalized communities, meaning underprivileged communities that have had a lot of discrepancies when it comes to healthcare and income. So it's going to help a lot of those communities. And it also opens up a lot of clean jobs, which is so nice because clean jobs are really essential, especially in our society today. And it will help not only reduce unemployment rates, but it'll also help us create jobs that are better for our world. And it's just such a good bill overall. I'm so happy that it got signed in. It is also good for the Biden administration, which is kind of unrelated, but it targets a lot of their goals, and it kind of gives him more credibility, even though it wasn't necessarily created by him, but
Yeah, it's kind of he's accomplished this huge, being able to pass this huge bill during his presidency, which gives him a kind of thing that he accomplished.
Yeah, and the same thing would go for any president. If they accomplish the goals that they said they would on their path, I guess, on their campaigning, then that immediately just gives them more credibility. But again, we talked about this before. Biden's current approval ratings have been dropping rapidly.
Yeah.
So this was kind of important for him as a person, just to gain back some trust, maybe.
Yeah, and hopefully for him just gaining back a higher opinion. From people.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, this is a huge bill, and it also is really good for the economy because one of the goals is to raise over $700 billion in income over 10 years for the government. It has a lot of things to help afford healthcare and a lot of different, just so many different things. And if you want to learn more about the different aspects to this bill, I would suggest like Googling yourself, but just know that the main things are targeting climate change, like the economy, helping with inflation and all that, and also helping a lot with healthcare and different marginalized communities, which is so cool, and I'm super glad it's happening.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
So congratulations to
the world,
our country, I guess. Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
All right.
The next update,
let's do this. We might make a Fun Day Friday about this too, because we have very strong feelings.
It's kind of a big deal. So Andrew Tate was banned off of Facebook and Instagram, and first of all, let's talk about like who he is. So he started kind of gaining popularity when he was like on a TV show called Big Brother in 2016, and he was also a kickboxer too, so a lot of people know him for that too. But he was removed from the series after a video was released that showed him beating a woman, and then since that time he has received like backlash, but also a lot of followers and a lot of popularity, especially on social media for like his posts and his content. He is an extremely misogynistic person, like very really much so. Like, it's not in debate that he's misogynistic. He said that about himself, actually. And for example, like he said, women belong in the home. He said rape victims are responsible for what happened to them. He said a lot of things about like basically like, promoting rape and like pedophilia and like a lot of different things, like pretty disgusting comments.
And like things he said about like women being their husband's property, women owing their husband some like a cut of their salary, women not being able to have multiple partners, but men should be able to have multiple partners, just like super double standard sexist things.
Yeah, and also that like men are smarter, like all these different like comments. And he actually said like quote, he's absolutely a misogynist. Like he made it very clear that he's misogynistic. Like he didn't try to hide it. He even said, quote, I'm a realist, and when you're a realist you're sexist. There's no way you can be rooted in reality and not be sexist.
And, like, I listened to a podcast with him, and, like, a lot of the things he words are worded so strategically. Like, he'd say things like, if me saying this and being realistic about this makes me sexist, then I'm sexist. But it's your opinion. Yeah. For me, this is what is real, and this is what is real. And if that's sexist, then I'm sexist.
He's one of those people that uses, like very false logic that, like, when you really dig into it, it doesn't really make that much sense. But he makes it sound, like...
so believable.
Like, logical and believable. Yeah. So... what really disappoints me about this is that, like, Ahana, like, showed me this video of, like, a podcast of him. Like, I had to scroll through the comments for, like, an hour to find one comment that was actually, like, hating on him. Like calling him out, everyone was, like, supporting him, and, like, he's just speaking facts, like, all this stuff, and it was, like, the influence this guy has over so many young people, like young boys especially, is truly terrifying, because when you're in that impressionable age and there are people and you watch a video of that and you read the comments and everyone's like, oh, this guy is great, then you might start thinking, okay, maybe he's true, like maybe what he's saying is true, which is extremely dangerous because that's just breeding a race of like misogynistic people. And it's just really, like, sad, and really, he's, like, terrible person. So.
Yeah, and it's also, like, he's so convincing. Like, the things he says absolutely have zero, like, actual logic behind them, and a lot of what he uses as evidence for what he says is, like, his personal experiences. He's like, personally, in my experience, I've never met, like, a smart, like, female chess player, which means that men are just naturally more intelligent when it comes to
But that's, like, there's so many different intelligent female chess players out there.
And there's also so many factors that goes into it, too, that, like, you can't account for, like, historical disadvantages, women not being introduced to the field of chess due to, like, misogynistic views by our society, and there's just, like, so many different things that go into it that isn't necessarily just men are more intelligent.
Like, you know? It's not a black and white thing. There's a lot of, you know, complexity to it, so taking a black and white view is not what we should do. And it's like some of his views are so like antiquated, like they're rooted in the way past when we were like more of a sexist society. Like we've moved past that. Why can't we just be past that? Like women are not property. We've realized that a long time ago. So like why are we still even having this conversation?
Exactly. It's devastating, but recently,
and this is the good part. He was banned off of Instagram and Facebook, which is now called Meta, which
is so weird. First of all, but that's
literally
off topic.
Because I was reading their article and they're like, he got banned off Meta, and I'm like, what the heck is Meta?
It's Facebook.
And then I'm like, oh right, Facebook.
I don't know why they did that, but
yeah. So he actually though before he was banned off of Facebook, he had 4.7 million followers at the account the time his account was removed, which is that's a lot of people.
And thousands of more people follow him on his various TikTok spam accounts and Instagram as well. And a lot of people don't even follow him, but they just listen to him and agree with him, which is scary.
He's kind of known for doing advice videos to men, where he's saying all this stuff about women that's sexist, advice.
He literally said that he wouldn't give a man mouth to mouth CPR if they were dying because it's gay.
That is messed up. You should prioritize. You should prioritize saving someone's life above anything else. That's just called not caring about someone else's life.
And he's filthy rich too. He's half a billion net worth probably.
Was he born rich? Did he come from a rich family?
So.
Do you know?
I think so. But he also he has this business thing where he teaches people how to be business savvy, and he makes a lot of money off of that. It's a school type thing.
Whatever you do, don't support him. Don't well, I guess you can't really follow him now because he was banned, but don't do anything to support him or give him more money than he already has. He should not be getting any more money. He should not be getting any more likes or the only comments he should be getting are hate comments, disagreeing with him and saying hey, that's
and we definitely don't condone hate comments, but calling someone out.
I don't mean important. Hate comments as in go kill yourself or something. I mean hate comments as in I totally disagree with what you're saying and giving
it's not even hate comments. It's
not hate comments,
realistic comments.
Yeah.
Calling him out. And I think the thing that's scary about this, it's good that he's being banned, but what's scary is how much power he's gotten in the first place, and how many little boys are being influenced by him already, which is so scary to see because they're so impressionable, and the fact that he's so confident in what he says and he's so convincing is scary because he makes an imprint on these people's minds.
Yeah,
and it's
if you just look at how many followers he has, if you look at the comments on some of his videos, I wouldn't have believed it if someone told me, there are people who support him. I would have been no. There's no way. There's no way anyone could support such a messed up person, but people do, and that's what really makes it terrible. And so I think if you do support him, then please
there's the door.
yeah, seriously. But also
just get educate about
yourself and because most of what he's saying isn't not most of it, all of what he's saying isn't true.
Or it's oversimplified.
Yeah, or it's oversimplified.
And honestly, I don't even blame all of his followers because they're so impressionable and they're at that, when you're that young, it's kind of, and I'm young too, I'm acting like I'm 40, but when you're young, it's
but especially if you're a really young kid, it's 8 or something.
It's the first thing you see that you think that someone tells you and is confident about, and they're so assuring about it, you kind of believe.
Yeah,
and that's so dangerous.
And then when everyone in the comments is affirming it, because I'm I feel so many people out there are including me, I'll see a video and I'll think it's funny, and then I read the comments and no one else does, and I'm oh, okay, never mind. Because I go by what the majority is saying or what everyone in the comments is. I'll just agree with them because I'm oh, even if that means changing my view. So I think having also people in the comments affirming that also makes it damaging too, especially to young kids. So yeah. So. Yeah, glad he got banned, but he should be I want him to go to jail and
I don't know. I just think he should not have a media presence at all.
I think he should just
yeah, it's scary.
He's terrible.
Yeah,
Terrible.
and what's weird is, like, he doesn't have a TikTok account, but how he got so famous was mostly off of TikTok because his following makes spam accounts and they post clips of his podcast that goes viral, and he got so much fame off that. So, like, the way he's able to market himself and, like, make the ridiculous thing he's saying believable is scary.
Yeah,
Like, it is. Scary.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on to another update. I'm going to talk about Russia and Ukraine.
Okay.
So, Russia and Ukraine, like we talked about last week, the main thing that's been going on is mostly about this power plant called the Zaporizhzhia power plant. And it is a major nuclear power plant in Europe. It is very strategically located and situated in a very important location in the southern Ukrainian city of Nikopol. I talked about this thing last week. For a quick recap, it's basically a power plant that's super important, a very large nuclear power plant. Mm-hmm. It is under the operation of Ukrainian technicians, but Russian soldiers have actually, like, occupied it technically, so they technically have, like, the occupation control aspect of it. And it has been a super stressful point because it has, like, nuclear power in it. Like, if for some reason Russia did something and, like, manipulated that power plant or, like, did some sort of damage to the power plant, then that could be, like, a international security threat. Mm-hmm. It's so dangerous, and this is why it's been gaining so much attention. Before, like, last week, I mentioned how Zelensky said that there would be dire consequences if he saw Russians, like, shooting at the power plant or, like, doing anything to the power plant. But recently, they actually have made some advancements on this thing. There's been a lot of shellings happening near this place. He basically, like, what's happening is, like, Russia's basically saying they have, like, nothing to do with it. They're like, oh, we're not shelling anything, like, we're not doing anything to the nuclear power plant. But they obviously are. Like, there's so much stuff going on in that area. Earlier this week, actually, the facility came under artillery fire, and Moscow and Kyiv blamed each other for it, and Kyiv is, like, the capital of Ukraine, and Moscow is the capital of Russia, and so they're kind of, like, blaming each other for the fires, which, like, how could you blame Ukraine for firing at its own nuclear plant? I don't really know. Yeah. Or, like, starting, like, a sort of conflict near the nuclear plant? I don't really know, but Russia's strongly denying everything, but they're obviously, like, causing a lot of issues there.
Yeah.
Recently, I think one of the biggest things that happened is that the UN Secretary General actually said that any damage to this plant would be suicide to Russia, which is a big step because the UN represents a large, like, plethora of international countries, very powerful countries, might I add. So by them saying that it would be suicide for Russia to damage or, like, take over the plant, that's basically saying that, like, we will get internationally involved if something happens to this nuclear plant. Yeah. So it is a very, very big deal. Like I said, fighting has intensified around this plant, and it has been, like, one of the major points, but it's a pretty big deal. And in other Russian-Ukraine news, Singapore actually sanctioned Russia as well. What are sanctions, Celine?
So sanctions are, like, punishments you can place down on a country for, like, following through with certain actions. Like, we placed sanctions on Russia after they invaded Ukraine, like stopping trade or, like, economic sanctions or,
Yeah. So it's basically just, like, economic or otherwise punishments to sort of, like, punish Russia for, like, invading Ukraine. And Singapore recently joined a list of countries that are sort of punishing them in that sense.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yeah, so that's the next update. Let's go to the last update.
All right, this will be the last update of this half. Hold on. Let me get to it. Let's see. Which one are we going to do?
It's always a little gambling game.
I know. Oh, that's not my update. Okay. I'm sorry, this is... Okay. So my next update is about Lindsey Graham. Okay. And Lindsey Graham was ordered to appear before the court, and he's a senator of South Carolina, by the way. And he was ordered to appear before an Atlanta jury investigating former President Donald Trump, who's also, going through the whole Mar-a-Lago search. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff about Trump on the internet right now. So Graham actually like requested to avoid testifying, but he legally has to do so because the court like wouldn't like agree with his request. Like they were like, no, we still like want you to come in. And the investigation is over attempts from Trump and his allies to overturn the election loss, which happened in November of 2020 when it was like Trump running against Biden. And the Fulton County District Attorney's Office is like the thing that's like leading the probe into the actions of Trump and his allies, basically figuring out like whether he did try to like kind of like, what's the word? Whether there was like foul play, basically.
Yeah.
And they've expressed interest in questioning Graham about conversations he had in the wake of the election. So like after the election with Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and also like other things they wanted to question him in and just bring him in for more like context about that. And his testimony could like prove their point about Trump. And the question of whether Graham testifies is up to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, where Graham like filed an emergency appeal on Friday, basically saying like he didn't want to go in and testify, but we'll see what the U.S. Court of Appeals says, and yeah, so that's basically what's happening there. So
Okay, interesting. This Trump case has been like one of the biggest hot topics in the news, and I definitely am curious to see what happens. But
me too. Yeah, we'll see. In Mar-a-Lago too, I'm very curious.
Yeah. By the way, the Mar-a-Lago is basically like a search that happened.
Yeah, a search of his Mar-a-Lago home where they found like classified documents that he wasn't really like supposed to just have laying around the house, so he could be like arrested. Potentially, that would be the like worst case, he could be arrested.
Yeah. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. And with that being said, that ends our first half. Stay tuned for more updates.
Hello, welcome back, everyone.
Okay. Do you want to start it off, or shall I?
You can start us off.
Okay. Let's talk about opioids.
Okay.
Woo! No, not woo. Very not
unwoo.
Unwoo. Anyways, opioids. What are opioids?
So opioids are like painkillers, but there was kind of like this whole we made an episode about this actually.
Yeah.
Like the opioid crisis, the opioid epidemic, sorry. Whatever you want to call it, but it was like this huge thing where like opioids were like used as painkillers, but people got so addicted because they had like these really addictive qualities, and they were being prescribed by doctors, but they were extremely addictive. People like died from it, and people also like got addicted to like drugs like heroin because of it, and it was like this huge thing. But yeah, just
it still is a huge thing.
It is a huge thing, and opioids are just basically like a form of painkillers that can be prescribed by doctors.
Yeah, and it's basically like how a lot of people start taking opioids is because they get prescribed them because of, you know, they got ill or they broke their leg or something.
Like an injury is probably the most common.
Yeah, and then after they start taking them, even after their injuries healed, they keep on taking them because they're so addictive. And just like a little bit in depth about the opioid epidemic. So it kind of started when doctors began prescribing patients painkillers that were marketed as less addictive than they actually were. So these opioid companies like market them as like not being as addictive as they were, but many people became easily addicted from them, and from 1999 to 2019 nearly 1 million people died because of opioid overdose, and this includes opioids used both illegally and the ones prescribed by medical professionals. So it is super devastating that 1 million people died from this preventable thing. But recently a case in the Ohio. Sorry, I'm not happening today. But anyways, recently there was a case that happened in Ohio, basically against Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens in their role in distributing opioids during this epidemic, and their role in sort of like, you know, helping people get access to opioids and like essentially killing people through their access to opioids. And so there was like a case filed against them, and the Ohio judge actually decided that they must pay a combined $650.6 million for their role in the opioid crisis, and these stores are Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens. So This is like a really big step, mostly because opioids have just been such a big deal, and a lot of these companies, like these big companies that aren't necessarily opioid companies but the opioid distributors, have not been held accountable at all for their role in this epidemic. So seeing it happen is very important. Basically, the judge that like decided this was Dan Aaron Polster, and he ruled that over the next 15 years, approximately $306 million must be paid to Lake County, and approximately $344 million must be paid to Trumbull County, which are two counties in which these companies sort of distributed opioids and had a big role in it. They said that the pharmacies abused their position of special trust and responsibility as registered dispensers, and in so doing fostered a black market for prescription opioids. So honestly, that's like a really big deal, saying that like Walmart had a black market. Like, that's a big deal. But their response to this was like very interesting but kind of expected. They said that basically all of them were kind of like defending themselves. Walmart released a statement that said they sued Walmart in search of deep pockets, and they also claimed the trial was engineered to favor the plaintiff's charges, and that Walmart actually like its role in this was like exaggerated. They said that and CBS said that they strongly disagree with the court's decision. So they're basically like saying that they didn't have a role in it, but honestly they did, and that's kind of undeniable. So
yeah. So it's good that they're finally having to take responsibility for like their role in the crisis, which was truly terrible. And check out our opioid crisis. I think is what
I think we called it the opioid crisis.
Check out that episode if you want more like in depth about that.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready to go to the next one?
Yes.
Okay, so my next update is about an Islamic State militant getting sentenced to a life in prison. So let's talk a little bit about the Islamic State, first of all. It's a terrorist group. It also is like goes by like ISIS and ISIL. There are like a lot of different names for, like, ISIS is, I'd say, the most like popular, well-known name for it, but it's also like the Islamic State, and I was really confused on that because there's so many like names for it, but that's just, if I say Islamic State, it's just the terrorist group. And they're like an extremist group of Sunni jihadists, and then like I've talked a lot about Sunni and Shia. They're two branches of the Muslim religion who like have different views on the successor of Muhammad. And jihadists are people who believe Islam is like the only real religion, and that like they should fight against people who don't believe in it, so they often like use violence. And in the case of like ISIS or like the Islamic State, they have used so much violence that they perpetrated on like so many communities to like basically in hopes of like, I guess, like spreading their religion, but it's like
and exterminating
others. And it's an extreme interpretation of the religion too, not like everyone who's part of that religion like acts like this. So anyways, a member of the Islamic State cell known as the Beatles was sentenced to life in prison on Friday. And there's this group called the ISIS Beatles, and they were like 3 mass terrorists, and they were famous for like their British accents, so they're kind of like named after the Beatles like singing group. But yeah,
that's really weird.
And they like brutally executed a lot of different people, including journalists and humanitarian relief workers. Like, the executions took place during the rise in Syria of the Islamic State. And in April, a jury concluded that El-Shaikh, who's like the man being convicted for life, was part of the Islamic State cell, and now he's going to be punished for like his role in that. And he's 34 years old, and he was found guilty on 4 counts of hostage-taking and 4 counts of conspiracy. And he was actually sentenced to 8 concurrent life terms without parole. And the reason they do like 8 life terms, because you like a life term is just life, so why would you need more than one, is because like if they appeal the decision, it makes it like harder to like if they get rid of 1 life term, they still would have like 7 others basically, so it just makes it harder for them to like get out of it. And the Beatles, which was like the group that this man was a part of, were like known for their abuse and torture of victims. Like, there was one instance in which they like forced 2 men to beat each other while they performed a mocking like play-by-play. It was pretty bad. And the 3 members were El Sheikh, Alexandra Cody, and Mohammed Emwazi, and they were said to like have grown up in West London and volunteered to fight for the Islamic State group in Syria, and they ended up guarding Western hostages. And like U.S. authorities have said the Beatles like beheaded 27 hostages. That's like a lot of people. So yeah, and El Sheikh, who's like the one I'm talking about, he was born in Sudan, raised in London, and he was like, his crime, he was accused of conspiring to kill 4 American hostages: James Foley, Stephen Soltoff, Peter Kazak, and Kayla Mueller. So yeah, it's pretty terrible, like what they all did. And actually the man like appealed the decision, but the effort was like rejected, and he was sent to a high security prison. So they're not using death penalty on him because prosecutors argued that a life sentence was needed to prevent him from like causing future harm, but also to like set the precedent for like other crimes, so they'll get a strict punishment, because they felt like life in prison would be like worse in this case. So yeah. Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible, but I guess it's good that someone got sentenced at least.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just sad to see things like this, and they're so common. But yeah. Also, I feel like people think that only like terrorist attacks happen in like the U.S., but I don't think people understand how many terrorist attacks happen in their own country.
It's incredibly frequent in like other countries. Like it happens in Syria, it happens in like all these different countries.
Like it happens in Islamic countries far more than in like the U.S.
I mean, like 9/11 is a huge terrorist attack, but there are many other terrorist attacks where people have died in other countries, and it's kind of like a commonplace thing in other countries too.
And they like attack their own like people. Like they attack people of the same race, same ethnicity, even as long as they have a different religion, as long as they're like not Sunni.
And there's even like the Sunni Shiite like sect division. There's even conflict, even though they're both part of the Islam religion. There's conflict within there too. So it's not even just like whether you're in that religion. It's even more complicated than just that. So,
it's like even if you're part of the specific, that's like it's basically like saying one branch of the religion will like attack the other branch, even if they were part of like the same basic foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, next update is kind of interesting, especially for me. I thought this was really interesting. It's definitely really sad, but it's also just like, interesting. I feel like I don't know how to word that better, but
yeah, it's like good to know about and like interesting to learn about.
Yeah, and hopefully it will help in the future with things. But basically, it was a study done by the Yale School of Public Health, and it was basically a study done about fracking sites and the impact on like health when people are born near fracking sites. And they conducted the study, and it basically came to the conclusion that children living near fracking sites and fracking wells at birth are 3 times more likely to develop leukemia.
That's a huge increase in risk.
It's terrible. Could you explain to us what fracking is?
Yeah, so like fracking is a type of mining basically where you like, which one is it? I get mixed up. Like, is it like,
I think you like break rocks and like.
Oh, okay.
Wait.
Is it like under subsurface mining? Because I did this entire like assignment about this in geography, but I forget.
Yeah, it's in the injection of a fluid at high pressure into an underground rock to open fissures and allow trapped gas or crude oil to. So basically, like they inject like rocks with like high pressure fluid, and basically they do it so it releases sort of like gas and oil from the rock in order to like get natural gas and oil, which is what we use a lot of the time for factories and just like, and it's a main energy source for different types of things, and it's a very common thing, but it has a lot of like negative side effects, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
So this report is very alarming. It was published on Wednesday in the Environmental Health Perspectives Journal, and it looked over 400 cases of acute lymphoblastic leukemia out of a sample of 2,500 Pennsylvania children aged 2 to 7. And the form of leukemia that is most common in children is like leads to other health problems later in life. And And from this like sample group, they found that the people who were like closer to the hydraulic fracking wells were way more likely to have developed leukemia, and to be a part of that group with leukemia. So this study like basically found that the risk for those living within 2 kilometers of a fracking site and who were exposed to utero like definitely increased their chances of leukemia. Okay. And basically the reason why this is because fracking can use and release chemicals that like, you know, they use to open the rocks and like just different processes to get the gas out that can be linked to cancer. So like when those chemicals have either like there's been leaks of the chemicals or the chemicals are just released somehow and people are breathing it in, or just like even, you know, somehow interacting with contaminated materials, then that can definitely have an impact on like whether they get leukemia or not. So fracking pollution is like a really big issue right now. It's very important to keep note of because it said that they can lead to exposure of contaminated drinking water, and it also has like a correlation to the distance, but it since it is so like the process requires so many chemicals to be injected into the ground, which basically forces the oil and gas up into the well. It basically like entirely, you know, it's not safe for anyone pretty much. It's super dangerous, especially when it's located near a place where lots of people live. So I think in the future, like what this is trying to tell us is to like better prepare for fracking sites in general, like to better prepare planning out and just how to increase safety when it comes to it. So yeah.
I think it just goes to show like the negative, a lot of the adverse effects of like mining, because fracking is only one type of mining. There are also a lot of different ones that are like bad for the environment or bad for like the water supply, and this is like causing like leukemia, which is pretty terrible. So there are a lot of adverse effects to like human activities that we kind of overlook a lot.
Yeah, and by the way, leukemia is like a form of cancer. So,
yeah. So
yeah.
All
right, last update of the day.
Alrighty, last one. Let's end it. Let's see. Is this a good one? I hope. Oh, well, this is definitely an important one. It's like sad just that this happened, but it's also important to like know about. So a black couple sued after the valuation of their house went up, and I'll talk about like why that is like happened. So there was a black couple from Maryland, and they recently sued a local real estate appraiser. And an appraiser is someone who like basically comes up with a market value of your home. So they look at your home and they like, okay, this is worth $400,000 or like $300,000 or like whatever they think it's worth. They come up with that value, and the value of the couple's home went up by $300,000 after a second appraisal shown by a white colleague, and after they like whitewashed the house basically.
Okay.
And they're suing in violation of the Fair Housing Act, which basically makes it illegal to discriminate against different things like gender, race, like, and they're basically saying that when the appraisal went up, like the reason it was so low when they were the ones showing the house was because they were discriminating against them since they were like an African American couple.
Yeah.
And according to the complaint that the couple filed, and the couple are Nathan Connolly and Shani Mott, they applied to loandepot.com to like refinance their home. And refinancing is when like a homeowner can get a new mortgage for their home with like a different interest rate and like a different loan, so stuff like that. But anyways, so they were trying to refinance their home, and it's a 4-bedroom house in Homeland, Maryland, and the neighborhood they live in is like predominantly a white neighborhood, and the company they used was called 2020 Valuations, and it was owned by Shane Lanham, and they performed like the appraisal on their home, and they came back with an appraisal that was like pretty low, and Connolly and Mott, who are the homeowners, then reapplied with another lender and like whitewashed their home, which meant like removing photos of like their black family and like having a white colleague present the property to the appraiser. And this the new valuation after the home was whitewashed came back at $750,000 when it was only $472,000 before, when they had been the ones to show it. So basically they were saying that the motivations for the low valuation before were racist because, like, as we can see, it went up so much. And this is not the first time this has happened. There have been a lot of different, like, African American homeowners who have faced this or filed lawsuits because there was, like, bias towards their home because of their race, and it's really terrible. But, you know, it's good that they're filing a complaint. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think racism is just, like, I don't know why. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say, like, I feel like it's more prominent right now, but that's, like, not true. I think it's just I'm realizing it more now because I'm, like, more involved in the news, but it's all obviously been happening, like, all over the place.
I think, like, a couple years ago, I kind of just, like, thought, like, we're over that stage, like, our society isn't racist at all, like, we don't, like, in the past we were, but we're not anymore because we abolished slavery and we, like, did all this stuff and got rid of all those bad practices. That doesn't mean that there isn't racism, like, integrated into our society still, because there still is in so many different aspects of life, like buying a home. There's psychological bias, there's, like, extreme just racism, and it's still prominent. So
I'm not gonna say it's definitely not more prominent now than it was before. It like, I'm not saying last year was somehow non-racist and this year is more racist. I just think that when you grow older, you sort of realize, like, you realize more things and you see more things and you're able to, like, just be more involved in those things, and it makes you realize, like, how inherently racist a lot of things are still.
So that's pretty much our news updates for the week. Do you have any good news for us?
Good news? I don't know. We finished the first week of school. That's good,
I mean, it's good to just kind of, like, get over it, because now you can, like, get used to the routine more. I feel like the first week is just chaotic, but then when you get into it, it's, like, it just becomes your, like, routine.
Yeah, your life.
And you get used to it, so.
Yeah, for those of you starting school, good luck. Otherwise, stay tuned. Follow our podcast. Follow our social media at weare_youth.org. And check out our website, weare-youth.org. And stay tuned.
All right, bye.